So Raikou has been in the NU tier now for a month and a half, and I don't think this mod has lived up to anybody's expectations, unless their expectations were that it would be a pretty mediocre option. This mod was speculated to be really strong, and pretty quickly I saw people say that Jolteon was better than it. So if that doesn't really showcase how quickly opinion shifted and just how dire the perception was, I hope that the next 25 to 30 minutes of explaining what exactly has gone wrong with Raikou will help. Of course, if you're new here, or if you're just a returning viewer as I subscribe, do make sure that you go down there and press that button. Even if you think that you're already subscribed, just go down and check. And while you're down there, if you see that you are already subscribed, leave a like. Comment down below what's been your favorite Raikou set. We're going to talk about at least a couple today. And of course, if you want to as well, you can show your support by becoming a member. You do get some extra uploads there a lot of the time. It's just me kind of uploading whatever the hell I want. I mean, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. Now, the most standard set for Raikou that we've seen so far, I would say, is Calm Mind. And there are, for Raikou's benefit, quite a few adjustments you can make to it. I'm going to try and talk about them all. This is the one that I saw the earliest in the metagame, though. Terra Blast, Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, Calm Mind. You can do Terra Blast Ice to let you snipe out Flygon. You can do Terra Blast Grass to let you snipe out the water ground types. It really just depends on what targets you want. Of course, Grass will hit any ground type, at least for neutral, and Flygon included. But Ice is a little bit more specialized in helping you catch grass types out, while also targeting Flygon a bit more effectively, as well as hitting your Goodgers of the world, your Gouges of the world. Otherwise, Raikou will be walled by them. And no matter how much you boost, you're not beating Gouge. I'm sorry. It will Sludge Bomb poison you, and you will cry. Also, if you have to Terrastalize and you're trying to Nin-1v1 a Gouge, good luck. So, that's I think you could already kind of see where the problems are coming from. But this idea of the set is very similar, of course, to what Jolteon used to do. Now, you're not as fast, and you don't have as much defensive utility because you lack Volt Absorb, but you do have more natural bulk, and that is helpful because now your generic just fast mons that maybe do contest Raikou speed tier, something, say, like Inteleon even, Talonflame, Noivern, especially when you factor in Calm Mind boosts, these Pokemon aren't as capable of actually threatening you for any meaningful damage, which is pretty nice for, you know, general purpose Raikou usage. Now, adjustments you can make to the set. Now, I also just want to talk about ability real quick. I still do not know which ability I prefer on Raikou when it's just generic, like non-specifically Pressure Stall. Because Inner Focus still seems kind of nice for the occasional fake out Ambipom, or even fake out Mienshao, or even, God forbid, Incineroar when people decide to cosplay as a VGC player. But Pressure is probably going to be generally a little more useful, just because, again, you guarantee some sort of progress. Fake out immunity is very niche, so you're going to see Inner Focus on each set. Just understand that this isn't necessarily because I think it's better, it's more because I think both are kind of equally iffy. This kind of comes back to the Jolteon point about why people thought Jolt might just remain better than Raikou. But what are some adjustments we can make? Because this set is all fine and dandy, but, you know, I just talked about why Jolteon kind of did it better. More defensive utility, and even just a faster Pokemon. So, one of the easiest ways, of course, is with Pressure Stall. If you really want, you can do something like this. You could do T-Bolt Scald Sub. Probably do like Terra Fly then. And this kind of just says, hey, I want to not be super Terra reliant. I want a little bit of extra safety versus Revenge Killers that I maybe wouldn't otherwise have. Flying's going to be, generally speaking, your best option. You could even do Fairy. This means you're going to have still a resistance to the CCs from Infernape and Mienshao, but instead of having an immunity to Flygon Earthquake, you will have an immunity to Flygon Outrage, as well as a resistance to First Impression, but then you also still are only neutral to EQ, so that could be a reason you want Fairy. You'll also be immune to, like, Dragon Tail for what that's worth, although that's pretty insignificant. And on the topic of substitute sets, you could even do, like, Vinku. We talked about Vinkun You know, Sub Protect, CM Scald, Suicune, you could do something similar on Raikou. Technically, you could do the same thing. And then you can give it Terra, not Stellar. And then you can give it Terra Water, and you are a Suicune. But don't do this, because it's horrible. Anyhow, like I said, the same idea of Sub Protect CM stalling is very, very possible. Maybe it's not as good, though, because again, like we said, you don't want to go Mono Scald on Raikou. You're going Mono Thunderbolt, and that is just even easier to be walled. Vinkun always did have some bit of an issue with the prospect of getting a water immune Pokemon versus you, especially if you just ran into, like, Boots Gastro. You were probably never beating that, because they were just going to be immune. They'd switch into you, and you just had to hope you could pressure stall. It was always a little bit awkward. And they gave you really good repositioning. Well, the opponent got really good repositioning when they had that option. Raikou, on the other hand, has to deal with the fact that every team's going to have a Mon immune to Thunderbolt, but they're also going to have a lot of Mons that just easily resist it and don't, like, have issues responding back. So think about your Serenas of the world, even your Bramblegasts, even, I'd say Rotom-Mow, but you're going to get pressure stalled pretty quickly. But maybe like Nasty Plot Motum could be vaguely annoying, maybe. Let me cook. But yeah, it's kind of just a similar idea. You'd still support it with T-Spikes all the same. Play it very similarly to Suicune, but the notable issues is I think you're walled a little more easily. And of course, you don't make progress nearly as easily as Suicune does, because Suicune got to spread Scald Burns. So you had a little bit more early and mid-game presence, because you just try and maybe get a Scald on, like, a Guja early. And if you got a burn, that was just really good for your long term. Same with if you could get a Scald Burn on something like a Bramblegast or a Serena. With Raikou, you don't have that same luxury, and that's why it ends up kind of faltering. Other Calm Mind variants, there aren't really any. I mean, you could go back to the first variant that we showed. You could just do something like this, and you could do lefties or boots. I think either's fine. But you could do something like this, and again, it comes back to just not wanting to be super Terra reliant. Scald is still really useful against a lot of what switches into Raikou. We talked about how you want coverage for ground types. Scald hits most of them, and you're also able to really pressure, no pun intended, all the grass types, because you can Scald Burn them, you can just Volt Switch chip them down, and a lot of Serena don't have synthesis. You know, Brambleghast doesn't want to be burned, Bonnet doesn't want to be burned, and doesn't want to have to keep taking Volt Switches. So it's a pretty practical way of at least trying to play the long game versus them, and keep momentum up on your side of the field as well. But of course, bear in mind, you are hard-walled by Gastrodon. Whether you care about that or not, that's up to you. Next up, Specs. We've seen a little bit of Specs lately, just because Raikou is quite strong, it is quite fast, and as we touched on as well, compared to Jolteon, and here's the Jolteon comparison. You can see Raikou is noticeably bulkier, a lot better HP, better defense, and even better special defense as well. So it's not the easiest breaker to just one-tap. And your coverage with Terastallization taken into account is actually really good. Specifically with Terra Blast Ice. Now, there is one issue, and this applies as well to Calm Mind Raikou. When you go Ice for your Terra, it's the same issue as Jolteon. You are super easy to revenge kill. And if you'll remember, back in the Jolteon metas, Passimian was everywhere. It was the best Scarfer in the format. Now, you're going to see this really play in when we talk about our checks and counters, and wow, there's a lot of checks and counters. Yeah, we have Scarf fighting types everywhere. So Terastallizing into an Ice type is always a little bit difficult. You're just very, very easily revenge killed. So, just like with the Calm Mind set, Grass is once again going to be a viable option here. It's a little bit better of a defensive typing, and as we mentioned, you still get a lot of the same coverage versus grounds. You just now also get to smack things like Gastro, Swampert, Quagsire on the Switch. Scald's already making pretty good progress against a couple of those there, but it is still nice to be able to immediately delete the Volt Switch blocker. In addition to this too, you lose coverage for Dragon types. However, the nice thing with this kind of set is you are still applying a ton of pressure with your Volt Switches anyway, and you're going to be able to constantly reposition versus those. So say you've got Spec Raikou plus a Caparaja on your team. You continuously can bring in Big Elephant and just get opportunities to throw off Nox, you know, get your rocks back up, maybe even just or off whirlwinds if you want to bother the opposing team. It's a very, very practical way of forcing progress. And, I mean, yeah, Raikou's pretty scary to try and Volt Block once it terastallizes, because you're not trying to take all that chip. Now, once again, and I'm going to reference, where is it? Right here. Yeah, this set. I'm not even going to add it to the team. I just want to show this off. This is another way of becoming less terastallizing required. Can't speak. I don't feel well today, and my brain's mush. But this is another good way of becoming less terastallization reliant. Terror reliant? Let's say terror reliant. That's so much easier. Less reliant on Terra. Anyhow. You can have extra sensory as another attacking move. It's not the sexiest option, but it's super effective coverage for Gigalge, Vileplume, and Venusaur. And it's neutral damage on Serena and Bramblegast. Bramble's very frail on the special side. I haven't done the calc, but I'm pretty sure you two-shot or are very close to two-shotting with the extra sensory. So it's a pretty good option, all things considered. And Terra Flying, because again, I think Flying and Fairy are both pretty practical for your anti-revenge killing needs. Fairy might be a little bit more realistic, I'm gonna be honest. And I say that because I think as a pivot, avoiding being super weak to rocks is always pretty nice. So, there you go. Now you could argue, I mean, hey, Fairy, if there's a rock and a spike up, you take the same amount of damage with extra potential for being, like, super weak to hazards if they get more than just one spike, one rock. And I will agree, that is an issue. Just kind of depends on what you think the rest of your team's going to do. Also, just for those that were curious, this is the Gallade. This chord in my head makes a lot of sense. Don't ask me to explain it right now, though. But now, let's talk about checks and counters. So Raikou's got a lot of checks, and this is really where I think the problem lies with Raikou. This is not a hard mon to, I'm not going to say stop, but it's not a hard mon to bother. Because there's just so many things that give this thing headaches. And Raikou is very overly dependent on having the exact right Terra type, I believe, in a lot of games, to guarantee that it's going to be a progress maker. There's not one Raikou set, like there was for Jolteon in the previous NU metagames, that you could just say, yep, this man is getting me progress no matter what you try to do. Terra Blast Ice Jolteon with Calm Mind Thunderbolt Volt Switch. That was very easy to feel assured every game that you were getting something out of that slot. You didn't really have to question how good your Jolteon was going to be. You knew it was going to be at least capable of putting in work. With Raikou, that's not the same, because you have such a diverse pool of answers to it. Which is good, by the way. It means Raikou is going to be a balanced part of the tier. The question is, will it be a good part of the tier? And so far, I feel like we've kind of decided no. So, again, you want to talk about offensive revenge killers. Well, Basculegion is one-tapping you with that Wave Crash. If you're not Terra Blast Grass, or I guess Water even, you could probably find a justification for. Just for Stab on Scald, maybe. Yeah, you're getting packed up by the fish. Just no ifs, ands, or buts. Flygon, another question mark Pokemon. Because, hey, what's your Terra type? Are you Grass? Are you flying? Because if so, okay, maybe you can turn the tides on me real quick. Of course, I have U-turn, so I can always suss that out. And imagine Terra Grassing your Raikou as I U-turn. Or, God forbid, as I first impression with Banded Flygon. Yeah, you could just assume there's a choice band option here as well, because, yeah, Banded would outspeed with Fimp. But Flygon poses a lot of questions based on your terastallizing type. Infernape's also annoying, particularly like how we talked about earlier, where you turn into an ice type. Well, now my CC super smashes you. I don't even have to Terra myself to kill you. So that's no good. And Infernape is probably the most obnoxious out of these all, or out of all of the options. Because the thing with Nape is there's a lot of versatility with it too for its slots and Scarf. Like, I don't have move slots filled in for a lot of these mons, just because I think most of you know what the sets run. It's like, you know, a lot of these, it's just gonna be dual stab and a pivot move, because most of these Scarfers can pivot. Once you get past these three moves, though, you have a lot of options in the last. You can even do like Gunk Shot with Terra Poison. This has been seen a little bit, just because you have a lot of Terra Fairy running around in NU. And so it is nice to be able to smack them. So even if Raikou were to be Terra Fairy, the set you'd maybe feel is the safest against Snape, or maybe you'd feel Flying is. But Poison with Gunk Shot can goob you. You can get Thunder Punched by an Infernape. This isn't really seen anymore because Gyarados is gone, but you could get Thunder Punched by an Infernape and just get folded like that if you were Terra Flying. Or even just Stone Edge. This is a very common last move as well because it has super effective coverage for Talonflame and Noivern in one slot. So that's no good. Of course, Scarf Crook's always going to be an option too, similar to Nape, where you just have a lot of coverage. CC, Gunk Shot, Stone Edge, all are pretty viable, and all of them are going to give the different Raikou Terra types problems. I shouldn't need to talk about Scarf Mienshao at all. This mon is a demon. Again, has a lot of coverage as well. I could be Ice Spinner, I could be Poison Jab, I could be Stone Edge. I've got a lot of options. And just to even showcase it too, you could talk about Life Orb from this perspective, Fake Out. This is probably the least relevant one. Oh, this feels like it's not even playing. Oh, it's not. Where'd the sound go? Where's my damn sound? Did my thing turn off? Yo, that's so funny. I've got a Turtle Beach headset. I'm so sorry for this distraction. I've got a Turtle Beach headset, and so I have a little, I'll call it a console. The little bar that decides how loud this is just completely turned off. And you can talk about Fake Out Mienshao too, because that's just, again, another way of getting Chip, and then Mienshao can try to reposition with a switch afterwards, maybe even pivoting into something, or switching into something like Flygon, and Raikou's got to think again. And I threw a Monkey Dory here. Now, Monkey Dory is probably the worst of all these Scarfers because it's a special attacker. And so if you're running into Calm Mind Raikou, or the Revenge Kill, you do see it run Psyshock a lot, though. And Psyshock is obviously going to be able to pop Raikou pretty reliably. You've also got Trick, though. And so if you really need a way to figure out how to handle, like, Calm Mind Raikou, you can at least Trick it a Scarf. And maybe that's just gonna negate it for the rest of the game. Specs, of course, you could hit with either move, and you'll do pretty good damage, although I'm almost positive Thunderbolt will do, like, 85 to you in return. Yeah. And now you can talk about mons that defensively check Raikou, of which there are lots. If we go back to this perspective here, I would say all 15 of these Pokemon are good defensive checks to Raikou. Of course, again, yes, it is reliant on what the Terra type is. But no, that does not mean they're not checks. I have seen a lot of people not understand what a check means lately. And I mean lately as in like for a year plus now. Dating back to Gen 8, people don't know what checks mean anymore. A check is not something that beats every single set. It's never been. A check has always been a mon that, in certain circumstances, can beat you. Whether it's switching in and then beating you like that, or whether it's just offensively revenge kill you. Like Flygon, or something like Infernape, is a check to Raikou. But you're not switching Infernape into Specs Raikou, expecting to live a Thunderbolt when you're at half health or something. Like, no, that's not how this works. It's a check because you revenge kill it. You outspeed, you're faster and you one-shot it with, like, CC if it Terra Ices. That's checking it. Brute Bonnet is, I'm not going to say a counter, because there is some situations with Terra Blast Ice, how that could pressure you. But you're a very good defensive check, otherwise. You beat a lot of the variants anyway, and you're really, really strong. So even with Terra types taken into consideration, you 2-hit KO Raikou in return. Raja is similar, where Raikou's going to need to have a Calm Mind boost up or be Specs, and get a little bit of chip on you before it's going to be able to 2-hit KO you with its Thunderbolt. Also have to keep in mind that Raja has Whirlwind. I could also be Terra Dragon. I just defaulted to doing Flying in here because that's what you see more often nowadays. Dragon's still fine though. And so I could be Terra Dragon Copper Raja. Resist your Thunderbolt, resist your Scald. Maybe even resist your Terra Blast Grass. The Terra Blast Grass was definitely going to hit my Copper Raja, yes sir. But I can take you on even more easy like this. I can Whirlwind you out. If you're Terra Ice, I can just beat the heck out of you with Iron Head. Got a lot of options. Dragalge is another good defensive check. A little bit shaky, you might want to argue, because, of course, I'm a special attacker. You'll see that with some of these other mons as well. But if you don't get too many Calm Mind boosts, I should pretty easily still be able to whittle you down with Sludge Bombs. There is some worry about if Raikou is the Vinku set. I could see a world where you actually get stalled out, but even then, Dragaji is flip turn, so if I have to, I can use it to reposition myself versus the Raikou and try and figure out from there how to do it. So it's not Jover. This one also learns Haze for what it's worth, and although you don't see it really ever, it's still been considered a viable option in previous generations, so you probably could fit it on here if you felt really weak to Calm Mind Raikou. Assault Vest Gallade, another good option. You just beat Raikou 1v1. And again, here's why Assault Vest is good on Gallade. You're bulky as hell on the special side, and you're also strong. Like, here's the thing, right? You can do max attack Adamant on this set. Y'all saw the EV spread in the other team, but like speed for modest Sylveon and rest HP. This is not being beaten very easily by a Raikou. And look at my attack. Hold on, that's 0 IVs. Hold on, let me get that up there. 383. You two-shot slow bro still, by the way. Okay, actually, I think you need hazards without life orb 2-shot, but you do a lot of damage to slow bro. You think I'm not gonna beat down our dumb little Raikou? A mon that doesn't even have a Terra type that it likes to run that can help it versus Gallade? No. Gastrodon. I will wall any set that does not have Terra Blast Grass. Kind of similar to Dragalge, where I think sub-CM, even without Protect, I honestly think, in the case of Gastro, because it's not very strong. Those sets could probably give it a bit of a headache, but they are going to still have to deal with the coverage question. And so, Gastro's not like complete dead weight. Plus, again, that's only like one variation out of the multiple that Raikou can have that's actually going to beat Gastro. Goodra, another good option. You could also Toxic Calm Mind Raikous, which is pretty useful. And I don't know if Knock is breaking the subs, but I'm gonna look at these sets. Sure, does it have Knock off? Yeah, it does. How much does Knock do? Yeah, Knock actually almost, with a timid nature, Knock still basically is always breaking sub. So you, with Goodra, actually are like super safe, even versus sub Raikou. On the Protect turns even if you have to. Like if they're Protect CM, you can just waste another move and you're chilling. So Goodra's gonna be good. Magnezone, and this is talking about like Iron Defense Magnezone, Iron Defense Body Press is why I have leftovers here. There's really not a lot. There's not really a convenient move Raikou can have to really chip away at you. And these sets run like... I've seen a lot of differing EV spreads. Like I've seen this mon go super fast. I've also seen it go more like down around here with like, this is the EV spread. Oh, careful's not what I want. What do you mean calm? But this is really pretty sturdy into Raikou, so good option. Alolan Muck, another just fantastic check. You're not frail enough to where Raikou's really beating you down. And again, Terra Dragon's super common on it too. Pretty trivial. The only thing with like Alolan Muck that you have, and this is a pretty big one, but one of the things with Alolan Muck you have to be careful of is Volt Switching getting too problematic for you. Raikou will maintain momentum on you forever, and that can kind of get awkward long term. So play it smart. Make sure that you remember you should, but you got a ground type on your team. Still try to use those to try and reposition. Quag, this is admittedly not the best one, because Specs Raikou with Scald actually pressures you really, really heavily. But, I mean, you are pretty decent at slowing down Calm Mind. Raikou's assuming not Terra Blast Grass. Registeel, like, genuinely walls the shit out of Raikou. It has to get to +3 just to have a chance to 2-hit KO Registeel. That's how sad it is. And no matter your Terra type, my body press is pressing. Assault Vest Ridiculous, another good mon. A little bit more questionable how well you like beat down Raikou, but you can always just Psychic Noise to get rid of Lefty's recovery if you need. You've got Future Sight to pop it, eventually can knock whatever item it has. And again, this mon's just so bulky that Raikou doesn't really break it that easily. Like, you don't really need to think too much with the EVs. You can genuinely do max and it's okay. You will, at the very least, beat down Raikou or force it out. It's just kind of similar to, say, Alolan Muck, where you don't want to become just free Volt Switch equity. That could be bad. Difference, of course, this has your generator, so it's not as big a deal for Reuniclus itself. It's more just an issue for the game on the whole. When you talk about what checks what, it's kind of similar to Silvally Ground from Gen 8, where Weezing's a great check to it, but just about a counter even. I would say Weezing is a counter in most regards. But you just have to be careful that you're not, like, constantly U-turned on the immediate switch, because it can get a little bit bad then, if you're constantly ceding free turns to the opposing team like that, but it's still, again, you're still neutralizing the threat decently well. I include Rhyperior here. It's not the best check, but you can force Terras, and with your own Terra even, that can make Raikou's life a little harder. Terra Blast, or plus with Scald actually like, almost always one-shots you, which is pretty sad, but it has to boost. You block Volts, it's okay. Hurt, I don't think this one needs much explaining. Without Terra Blast Grass, it's a little hard. I do think plus one Terra Blast Ice probably does a lot, though. But again, you burn the Terra. You could just flip turn on that turn, and you're pretty happy. Serena, pretty sturdy check. Also, I guess I could add Venusaur here. I'll do that. I'll even do lefties. Why not? But Serena, pretty good check. The only variant you care about too much is Terra Blast Ice. Just like some of these other mons, Volt Switch is a little bit scary if you're not Synthesis, but if you are Synth, then you're pretty happy. And again, a lot of Raikous just genuinely won't have a great way of hitting you anyway, so not too bad. Venusaur, there are actual defensive Venusaur sets that run around. And again, the appeal is a little bit better of Special Bulk than Vileplume. Actually, quite a lot better Special Bulk than Vileplume. 8100's got like decent advantages to 7590. But yeah, unless Raikou's Terra Blast Ice, it's really not doing a ton. You have Synthesis for recovery. You've got Leech Seed as an option too. And your knock is going to be at least a little bit annoying for Raikou to deal with, even with sub. And then last one, Vileplume, because just like with Thundurus, it's not that easy for Raikou to stall you out, especially if it doesn't have sub. Vileplume will, I think, most of the time beat Raikou. Specs, again, you can talk about Volt Switching constantly, but it is what it is. You've got a mon that forces the desire for Raikou to Volt, so you could always try and Volt Block, while those other mons will make Raikou feel like it needs to try and predict in the opposite way, and that's where Vileplume will come in. But yeah, that's kind of the sad story of Raikou. A mon that had a lot of hope coming into the tier, but once it got here, it was met with a lot of options for counterplay. That's not to say Raikou's bad, it's just not that amazing. It's not as good as we thought it was. It's not like the metagame staple we anticipated. I hope this, hey, if you were having issues beating Raikou, I hope this helped. Like I said at the beginning, if you made it through this video and you're not subscribed yet, let's go fix that. Join the movement as we go for our end of the year goal of 10k subs. And, hey, if you want to join as a member, you will be getting more content. I went over my NU Classic win from 2020. Tomorrow will mark the 4-year anniversary, which it's got a special place in my heart, man. That's it for me, though. Thanks for watching. Catch y'all next time. Peace.